Written by A Mysterious Lurker. A few months ago, I adopted a dog. He's literally the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. The girls at the shelter almost didn't show him to me because they thought a guy would be more interested in a German Shepherd mix or a Lab, not the brown Pomeranian. The moment I saw him, I knew he was coming home with me. The shelter was unsure of his age. His previous family adopted him from someone else before surrendering him. They stated money issues, and the old family couldn't give him the care he needed. While I was there, I could tell the girls at the shelter were nervous around him for some reason. I didn't know why. He didn't really bark often, and he wasn't mean. No gray around his muzzle, so he wasn't that old. I called him Peanut, but he wasn't attached to the name. I signed for him and paid the fee. In the next hour, he was home relaxing in a bed I'd bought for a bigger dog. In the end, I named him Alfred. It was because of the way he barked on the rare occasion he would see something outside he didn't like. He sounded like a British man saying the word bark instead of how a dog would normally sound. I often mimicked him to mock the poor little guy. Putting on my worst accent, we would bark together. Bark, bark. I say bark, good sir. It would make him stop barking quickly and look at me. My friends didn't really like him. They preferred big dogs and not yippy little things they called ankle biters, even though Alfie wasn't like that. Within the week, he also had many cute nicknames. Alfie, Ralphie, Pudding, and Pie. He tolerated it all. The damn dog was spoiled, and he knew it. Back then, a few people had gone missing from the park near where I lived. I only walked Alfie during the day, so I paid it no mind. I did notice the lack of homeless people in recent months. I would give the more friendly ones change if I had any on me, but now the park was empty. I wondered if they were all doing all right, and I just moved on to a better place to crash. Around that time, I got a new job. My neighbor could let Alfie out, but a day came when they weren't home and I arrived late. Alfie gave a sharp bark in his human-sounding voice, telling me how displeased he was. At least he didn't make a mess inside. I didn't even take off my shoes. I put his harness on and we were off to the park so Alfie could do his business. I found it a bit creepy in the park at night. The path cut through some trees and the empty playground looked straight from a horror movie in the dark. Alfie was taking his sweet time picking a spot. He was very shy when it came to using the washroom. When his ears perked up and he froze, I didn't think anything was amiss. I assumed he had heard some other animal and it freaked him out too much to pee. A shuffling sound made me turn my head. A figure coming down the path towards us. Since I knew the homeless men of the park, I thought it was one of them and turned away. They never caused me any problems, and I felt no threat being alone with one at night. That was a mistake. I wondered how things could have been different if I had just left when I saw that figure coming closer. Alfie started to bark and then started pulling on his harness. I've never seen him do that before. I turned again to look at the figure just as it went under a park light. I gasped over what I saw and took a step back, dragging poor Alfie for a second. It was deathly thin and pale, jaw twisted in a snarl and eyes completely black. Its spine was crooked and its arms curled into its chest. I wanted to pick him up and run, but the twisted creature ran forwards. Despite its broken-looking body, it was fast. I could do nothing as it tossed aside my best friend. He let out a yelp and his little body bounced off the hard ground, and he stayed still. I cried out for him, feeling distraught over the fact he got hurt. The distraction nearly cost me my life. The thing charged into me, slamming me into a tree. The arm I raised to defend myself snapped and I screamed in pain. Still, I looked over at Alfie's little motionless body. Hot tears stung my eyes and I could not forgive this thing for hurting him. I kicked it in its stomach as hard as I could. You hurt my little Alfie, you bastard! I didn't have any weapons on me, but no one hurt my dog and got away with it. The thing stumbled backwards and I crashed my body on top of it, my broken arm throbbing in pain as I thrashed at it. I punched it and slammed that hideous face against the ground as hard as possible, as many times as I could. I fought until I ran out of energy to do so. Cradling my arm, I stood to go over to Alfie. The thing on the ground had different plans. It snapped out a hand, grabbing my ankle and pulling it out from under me. I slammed to the ground on top of my broken arm. I felt sick from the pain and nearly blacked out. The only thing keeping me awake was a chance I could still save my furry little friend. The pale creature tossed me aside. I slammed against a tree again, my ribs feeling like they broke. I didn't do any damage to the thing. Black eyes looked me over in a hungry way, and I'd never hated anything more in my entire life. I couldn't do a damn thing to save myself from this thing, let alone save Alfie. I could only hope he got up and left if he woke up after I was dead, or someone found him. I didn't care about my life, only him. The creature that attacked us didn't look capable of rational thought, but a flicker of intelligence came into its eyes. It picked me up by my jacket and easily lifted me off the ground. I couldn't breathe from the combination of pain in my chest and fear. Slowly, it opened its mouth. Rows of sharp teeth glittered in the dim light. It just kept opening that damn mouth, wider and wider, until it looked as if its entire face was being taken up by that dark and terrible maw. It meant to take off my head first. A sound made us both stop. A sound that made my heart stop. Fear and hope mixed together as I looked over. Alfie was standing. He let out a bark at the creature. I silently begged him to make a run for it. The creature noticed the way I was looking at my little dog. It knew it would cause me more pain if I watched Alfie getting eaten before me. I was dropped to the ground. Unable to do much, I latched onto one of the pale legs, trying to slow it down. "Alfie, run! Go home, please! Go home!" I begged my little friend, who stayed put while barking. I may have been crying then. If I could do anything, it was to save my good boy. I couldn't even stand up. The creature limped forward, dragging my body behind. We got ever closer to little Alfie as I used everything left in me to help him avoid my same awful fate. Then something happened that I never expected. In the end, Alfie saved us. He stood the creature down, which was ready to kick him aside again. The little dog had a reason to stand tall. It was something I was never aware of, and which may have stopped me from adopting him if I had ever known what he was hiding away. The creature was a few steps away from Alfie when my little friend started to change. His face twisted into a snarl I'd never seen before. I choked on air as his head started to twist around, all the way around, until the snarling face was upside down. The creature stopped, confused. With a crackling sound, a tear appeared in Alfie's fur. Fiery orange light poured out as heat blasted the both of us. The creature started to take a few steps backwards. I clung to it, still not knowing what was happening, but refusing to let it escape after what it did. A look of horror came across both our faces as something started to appear from the crack in Alfie's back. A twisted shape made up of an amalgamation of black dog heads started to appear. All their jaws were snapping and spit flew. The heat almost became unbearable. I was again tossed aside, but the creature was too slow. The snapping jaws had spotted its target. Alfie's little paws lifted off the ground slightly as the grass below him started to burn away. The tangle of jaws came forward, catching the other monster. It screeched, trying to free itself. It even ripped its own arm off, trying to get free of the black hounds. Being so close to the burning jaws made his skin start to blister and blacken. My mouth dropped open at the sight, unsure if what I was seeing could even be real. In a few short minutes, those terrible hounds started to tear the twisted, pale creature apart, bit by bit. It could do nothing to save itself. I managed to sit up, chest aching, to watch as the remains were pulled into the opening that formed in Alfie's fur. Aside from scorched grass, no evidence remained of the struggling pale thing. The black hounds devoured it all. Then they went back to where they came from. The opening closed up again, the light fading. Alfie's head snapped back into place with an audible click. I was left sitting in the park, doubting my own eyes and nursing a broken arm. At first, Alfie looked stressed. After what I'd seen, it would be understandable to leave him there. Instead, I opened my good arm into telling him to come over to me. He wagged his tail and leapt into my arms. The little guy licked my face, which he rarely ever did. I could never tell the police the real story of what happened in the park. I just said I was jumped and beaten up, and Alfie somehow scared the guy away. The cops didn't have anything else to go by, so they wrote it all down. A week after my attack, they found a guy in the park mugging and hurting women, so they just added my attack onto his list of crimes. He was going to be put away for the muggings anyway, so I didn't care to correct them. I've kept Alfie, but I'm unsure what he is. Aside from the cutest dog ever, did he take that form to get my guard down? Was he going to eat me someday? At this point, anything was possible. I had trouble sleeping because Alfie would just stand in my doorway staring, his eyes looking as if he knew something I didn't. To test him, I got out his favorite treats to get him worked up. Who's a good boy? Who is it? Is it Alfie? Are you the good boy? Are you the best boy in the world? I asked in my best good boy voice. Alfie barked and went around in circles excited. His tail wagged and he didn't understand why I wasn't just giving him the damn treat already. Finally, he broke and revealed a part of what he was. He stopped moving, his eyes glowing like embers. His paws lifted off the ground and the tiles under him warped from the heat. I thought he was going to eat me until he spoke. I am the good boy. Well, he did admit to it. I dumped a bunch of treats on the ground. He landed back down, heat faded and eyes returning to normal. Gobbling down the treats, I petted him. Whatever he was, he's my perfect boy. He could eat me today and never for all I cared. He saved my life after all. Since then, he hasn't spoken aside from barking. In the end, Alfie was well worth losing my security deposit over. Thank you for listening. You can handle another horror story, right? And a very happy birthday to the lurker who suffers me with such grace.